That would be former Chief Chris Shade. And then we're gonna have our Kate Kempton do the presentation on the treaty, rights and where we stand today on all the treaties. And it's quite vital that we are able to share this information to the people. Okay, we'll begin with Charlie.
Okay, nicho kwets no goats zagi. Nisto and the gokaki not goats any. Charlene Plume. As a mother, a grandmother, I am speaking to you from my heart. We must save our rights and what's happening. We are on the recognition tables. And the way I understand this recognition table is whatever our leadership has on the table, on the recognition table, they have to share this information with the tribal members throughout Canada. That I am talking to you. Treaty 1 to Treaty 11 have been bringing their community together and informing their community and their elders. But we haven't had a meeting for the blood tribe members, Sichikai and Bigani. So now I'm going to bring you something that was on the Cow and Plow agreement. Okay, I'm going to show you the difference. This is what they were giving each member on the reserve. And some of them, they were just left on their gate by their fence. Okay, compare this. This is what they weren't explaining it to us. They were just dropping it up. Okay, now I'm going to show you something. This is the full agreement of the plow and cow. This is what they were supposed to get the community together and explain what was in this document. Big difference from this. So this was supposed to be explained to us before the vote. Now, every time something is going to be brought up, they always have vote yes for the distribution. And then they had this full agreement, which we didn't know what was behind it. And then they had the trust agreement. In the federal and provincial elections, they always have a different ballot for each thing that they're voting on. 1981 or 1982. Remember, we all got 2000. Our leaderships back then, they just gave us a distribution. We didn't have to vote on it. That money belongs to each individual on our reserve. So now we're hearing we're going to have a distribution. But guess what's going to be under hidden is the recognition table. We need to find out what's on the table, on the recognition table. And how is it going to affect us? So it's time to wake up and people to read documents and not just vote yes because we're getting money. This is the future of the unborn. We must think of our future generations. Let's leave them something. We're already losing our land. We can't even go to the north end. If you park on there or be there or even down at our river bottom, you're kicked off. You're on private property. When did we sell or give that piece of land away? I have the acres claim. I believe it was 600 and something acres. On this document, it doesn't say blood tribe or blood reserve. It has a number company. It is really sad what our leaderships are doing, undermining the whole reserve. So if it's happening here, it's happening on the other reserves. So all the grassroots people, let's start standing up and speaking out for the future generation. And thank you. For information. If you want to see the full agreement of plow and cow, you go to Welch Wilkins, the law band lawyers, but you have to sign a waiver of confidentiality. So if you guys want to read the whole thing, you guys could go there and pick it up.
So right now, the next speaker we have is former Chris Shade. He'll be giving a presentation in regards to the process of this gathering. And here's Chris. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, Nick, so I get connect so much. Because of my experience in my former role as a chief, I have some very serious concerns on what's unfolding before us in this UNDRIP, United Nations of Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and all the things that are flowing out of there, which Canada put up, such as this a condition on the a condition that they have placed on this is the First Nations going into this, since the abolishment is going to happen through the Indian Act. The new one that's coming forward is going to be a self-government under this new federal government regime. It's a the conditions in this self-government when it was first designed was way back in the early 2000s. I don't know if some of you can remember First Nations Management Act. First Nations Management Act was identical to what we have today, except today they're doing away with the Indian Act and being replaced by a self-government. Now, some have told me that they're negotiating not for a self-government, but something else. Well, sorry to tell you that the federal government doesn't operate like that. I personally had experience on when I was on the negotiation table with a chief representing the West. There's 4 of us chiefs. We sat opposite the federal government negotiators. So we came up with we all agreed on a fairly good model, which was a good governance model. It led to holding our leaders accountable, transparency, and running and ensuring that any oaths of office that were undertaking that they were enforced. They were enforceable. Today they're still not enforceable. But anyways, so when they presented when it came back. That document that came back, and the First Nations Management Act, it was an entirely different document. So that's when I learned my lesson, never to trust the government in any kind of negotiations you do with them. And this is a fact that if somebody researched this is exactly what happened. At the same time, Paul Martin started running for Liberal leadership, and he had he had stopped in Okotoks, north of Lethbridge, south of Calgary, to address on his campaign trail. He was already elected as the leader of the Liberals, and I attended, and I had a face-to-face meeting with him, and he invited me to be part of his team. At the same time, as a First Nation leader, we're trying to figure out how can we counter with this First Nations Management Act. And that's when it dawned on me that I could be part of this team and start working from the inside as a liberal to try to make changes or to stop this legislation. Well, I did. I had several meetings with Paul. When he comes to Alberta, we're automatically invited. I was invited. He asked me a question and I answered and I told him, yes. I don't like that. A lot of chiefs don't like that. It's not the same document that we negotiated. So he trashed it. But this will never go away. Now it's come back again under this, and it's the same areas that we're going to become a fourth level government. We're going to be under the province. And the toughest part is our lands become fee simple. In other words, we will be having the tribe or tribal members can now, as fee simple, can go to it sounds good. You can go to a bank and borrow money to build a home on that land, and your land is up for collateral. The only thing is, when the unemployment on the blood reserve, as an example, is over 70% during the winter months and high 50s in the summer, not too many people are making enough money to pay for a mortgage. So we begin to lose our land. That's the scary part. Now, when someone was saying it's not going to impact the treaties, well, I've just mentioned an area which is the whole treaty is based on land. Treaty number 7, supposed to protect our lands. So here's a breach of treaty. And the wording in that treaty is to have and to hold for our people, the members who are on the Treaty 7. It was originally called the Blackfoot Treaty and Other Tribes, number 7. So there is a breach of a treaty by Canada by when they're saying, you know, you're going to be under, you're no longer going to be a Federal Reserve. It's what I'm understanding. You're going to be under the province. The reserve now is handed back to you people. You can take back the land. It sounds good. But the backside of it is that in the United States, there are reserves there. They call them checkerboard. Some of their tribal members have lost their land. And with the ever increasing population we have, we'll never be able to maintain our land. It's going to be the death of our nations, not just us, but other tribes. So why my concern here is that very part, if we're not careful, the whole process of the as I understand in my research, the whole process of the design of this legislation only involved AFN, provinces, and a few select people across Canada. There was no consultation with First Nations leaders. And when you talk about consultation, up to this day, right till today, this is probably the first consultation of any in any manner to the Blood Tribe people and other First Nations as to what we are faced, what's our future. As you will hear from experts who are going to be talking, and they will be saying those things. Because if we understand that our big claim. See, originally the big claim has been in courts for a long time. And of course, Canada, I don't want to talk about it too much. It's still in the courts. But as you understand that it's being referred back to a Supreme Court. Prior to that, when Canada, before they put it objected to the settlement offer recommendation was that Canada had already designed these big land claims. If you have a big land claim, what automatically supposed to come with that was self-government. So that they're using the wording, and then you can manage your own monies from that point on. But we've never been able to fully understand that because nobody consults with us. So an individual like myself and others do their own research. And we talk to legal people and experts. And this is what's slowly starting to come out. If we don't have, if Canada never consulted with our leaders, then our leaders are not consulting with us, there's a huge problem there. There is a huge problem. So I've talked with some young leaders, some leaders, they don't really know what's going on. Unless they're told not to talk about it. I can't understand that. If you're elected by the people, you should. Now, my final area I'm going to talk about is so what should we counter with? What I countered with was stopping it way back in 2004, 2005. I think the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples came up with a recommendation that Canada should be looking at a treaty-based relationship with First Nations, the ones who are in the treaties. But there is one area that, as a First Nation, I'm addressing First Nations now. We have to do is to be unified. And I liked what I heard from the other conference in Calgary was Treaty 1 to 11 when they came together. We need to be unified. We need to stand firm in what we are trying to do, but not only in politics. But one of the first things we should be looking at, if we want to be sovereign or be treaty-based, we got to start developing our own economies. We were colonized to fight amongst ourselves with each other so that no one can succeed. The few people that have been able to succeed, then others are always trying to pull them down. That's the problem we have. And that's a problem. I just spoke to a colleague of mine from New Zealand. He talked about the stats in their community. I thought he was talking about ours in Canada. Exactly the same colonizers. So it's still here. We're still being impacted by it. So if we're going to get together, we need to have an economy. Commerce has to be developed in our communities. When I was a chief, we had a major conference in Calgary. We were very successful. Over 400 tribes from 400 delegates attended. We had quite a few from the United States. And those are the ones that when they came, they were already in the United States, were ahead of us in this. A lot of the tribes are working together to succeed. And that's what we need. In the past, our farmers, I come from a farming family, a lot of people on the reserve, Blood Reserve and Siksika had very good farmers. The farming that was done there was still our cultural values were still alive and well. That was we supported each other and they worked together, especially at harvest season. There was no combines back then. They had a thrashing machine they pulled from one field to the next. My grandfather in his area, all the farmers in that area, they had all small patches of farm, maybe 100 acres, but they worked together. He got the wheat off the field before snow flies. So that was an example of success. And of course, the government found out that we were getting really successful because we had the best farmers in southern Alberta, right through southern Alberta. And the government of Canada stopped us. And thus that led to some settlements that have happened. That made us poor. And one thing I will have to say is that we will never get ahead with this present type of Indian Act or government. We need to reclaim and make our treaties be revisited, and let's start working on them so that we can be more united in commerce. I know politically, we always have our different views, but to survive, that's what we need to do. The treaty is what protects our land. It's not the Indian Act. Our treaty wording in there is to have and to hold. That's us, to have and to hold. Not to put it up as a collateral to operate your business, and if you fail, your business, your land is gone. I'm just going to quote you a wording here. That's what's happening to us. It's still alive and well today. I'm just going to quote you, and that's what we have to overcome, these kinds, and we have to look ahead, the best for our children and grandchildren and the future for our communities. Here is a quote, and a lot of you know these quotes, but I'm going to, this is a quote of Sir John A. Macdonald. He says, I have reason to believe that the agents as a whole are doing all they can by refusing food until the Indians are on the verge of starvation to reduce the expense. Not only expense, but to make us weaker. So we can be pushed around like cattle, so that we don't put up a fight for our rights. Because our people back then they were weakened by a strategy that was done by the colonizers. Now, what we have to do today is start revisiting what happened to us, examine it, and make plans to come together as treaties, to start building ourselves up, pick ourselves off the ground, and let's move ahead. Because this is the only way we will survive. If we don't, we're going to be our reserve is going to be non-existent. All the reserves are going to be non-existent. So we have to come from that approach. Thank you.
Okay, got it. All First Nation treaties are entrenched in the Constitution Act of Canada. The recognition of rights discussion table sets you to lose treaty lands by tribal leaders across Canada. This way, the government is not to blame. However, in most cases, there are no vote and no consultation by our leaders, which have violated our constitutional rights, which is a criminal offense. And I do believe that is under the Elections Act of Canada. So at the same time, it's quite vital that, we have consultation by our leadership. So again, the recognition of rights discussion tables, this has been in existence for some time, and it started out with none of it process up in northern Canada. So at the same time, I just wanted to show you on the recognition of tables that just a brief history for us guys. Leadership got back on again. Roy got back on 2016. And at the same time, there was 2017, there was a MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, and 2018, the MOU was signed. We got on the recognition tables. It takes 5 years to get off the tables. That's what the documents that I read, and that's how they put it up. So after the 5th year, then at the same time, so 2023, July 5th, 2023, that's just a couple of months away, we'll be off the recognition table. So then we could be, coerced into into self-government. And I want to show you, what recognition tables and how many people are on there. So who has gone on the recognition tables? So the recognition tables of indigenous rights and self-determinations discussion tables is again just designed for us to become corporations. And these are some of the in British Columbia. Look at how many people: Caria, Sakina Tribal Council, Coastal First Nation Council, Haida Nation. All these are on the discussion tables, and some of them have gone into self-governmency. And then at the same time, then you go into Alberta. Alberta here, as of when we got this printout, the Blood Tribe, Métis of Alberta, Métis Settlement and General Council, the Cree First Nations, Sawridge, Stoney Nakoda, First Nations, and then Treaty 6. There was information that came across the line where the Governor General signed a document overnight. They took all the road allowances from the Stoney Nakoda tribes, Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley Band. So that's they have no more road allowances. The government took that back. So those are the beginning process of those cash settlements that they took under the they dangled the money in front of them, and so basically, once they get the money, where they lost the treaty rights. Their beginning process. Saskatchewan, Manitoba. Just give you an idea. Look at how many people are. Ontario, Quebec, Atlantic, none of it, and then the Yukon. So basically, these documents we got them from the. I got them, was able to get them off the computer. But now, if you were to go under the recognition tables, it'll just say they're still upgrading the information. It's been like that now for almost 3 or 4 years now. So this just proves that the Blood Tribe participating in indigenous communities, the Blood Tribe, when the discussions started was 2017. The milestone on that was July 5th, 2018. The parties signed a memorandum of understanding on reconciliation. Blood Tribe links and Blood Tribe Canada celebrates a keystone, a pathway of renewal and reconciliation. And that was when they began the process. But a red flag came up, and I was thinking about it, and I had asked my wife, okay, when they signed the participating the recognition tables in 2017, and the process that began, I have to say we were not notified. And at the same time, I later found out the process of this thing. We had lead negotiators, and these lead negotiators represented all the people of the Blood Tribe. But I don't ever remember giving my sovereign rights and having somebody make decisions for me or my family in regards to this lead negotiator for chief and council to make all these major decisions. So to me, that's criminal. That's a very criminal act under the Elections Act. So at the same time, now they call themselves elite. That they're making decisions with or without us. And another example is a 2068 headway lease on the BTAP. There was no referendum, there was no vote. They just went ahead and did it. And again, that's just dictatorship, at its worst. So this is to give you an idea. And then I wrote a letter to Stephen Cohen on the November 23rd, 2022, emailed at 6:25 a.m. And then so he finally he didn't respond. Andrew Luth, right here. Andrew Luth was the one that responded right here on November 23rd. There was 3 emails I had sent Mr. Cohen, and Andrew Luth responded. And then he said, I work with Stephen Cohen, and he asked me to acknowledge receipt of your letters. Both emails have been received, and there are many details to go through and consider. Well, I think your concerns might be directly addressed by the Blood Tribe Administration. I can assure you that the self-determination discussions do take a long time and that any potential final agreement would need to be ratified in a vote by the First Nation members. So it clearly states right there, we have to vote on it. They cannot supersede us by saying they have supreme decision powers. No, this is the blood reserve. We are Blood Tribe members and we all own Blood Tribe, and collectively. And those treaty rights are inherited are entrenched in the Constitution that, and they have to be able to we have to have a voice in it. It'll be crazy to, it'll be crazy for us to not say anything, not stand up, then later on bellyache about it. That's probably what's going to happen. So this is a letter to Mr. Cohen on December 7th, 2022. And then I just want to read you, one part on it. And then it just simply states that the Blood Tribe's attempts for recognition of rights table was in the early 1996, was accepted by Chief Roy Fox and council before an election and later failed government agreement. Final agreement ratification vote 2012 to stop self-government process. And again, with no ratification vote on the discussions to start when Roy was elected in 2016. And then get this guy out of here. Okay. And then so the discussions began in 2017 again, and the milestone was on July 5th, 2018, and the parties signed a memorandum of understanding and reconciliation. It will take 5 years for July 5th, 2023 to get off the recognition tables to begin the final vote, with one of the councillors openly saying that we are already in self-governments. This compels the Blood Tribe membership to get in contact with you, and we are aware we will be off the tables on July 5th, 2023, found Indigenous Relations Canada and federal government. With respect to all treaty members throughout Canada, the concerns regarding the government of recognition of rights negotiating tables of self-government agreement, you, the Canadian government, should know that no such agreement can or will be put in place without all treaty memberships voting in favor of approving this agreement. There are a few First Nations with standalone self-governments in the country, and they normally take many years to negotiate. The membership was not informed about the negotiation, consent, or approval of the membership. This will not necessarily stop the negotiations, but the recognition department should be very careful to ensure the community is fully informed and consulted before a vote is held to approve the agreement. All treaty members on and off the reserve who are eligible to vote be given notice of the vote that will be held. And if the agreement is not ratified by majority of those who vote, it will not be ratified and will not come into force, much like your experience of the First Nation land management negotiation process. And our vote or treaties are entrenched in the Constitution Act of Canada. So it is quite, that was a letter that I wrote to Kevin Cohen. And then right now, in that letter to Kevin Cohen, currently, Dorothy First Rider is a lead negotiator before that Councillor Kirby Manyfingers made decisions that impact our sovereignty. There was no ratification vote by Blood people to allow Blood Tribe Chief and Council to decide on behalf of the Blood Tribe membership to have a lead negotiator to make major decisions on behalf of the Blood Tribe members. There is absolutely no transparency and accountability and violates the Blood Tribe members' right to vote. And all decisions, especially our treaty rights, are collaboratively owned by the Blood Tribe membership. It belongs to every one of us equally. So again, for our next one, the Blood Tribe membership never relinquished our rights to one person to be lead negotiator for the Blood Tribe people. This was done in-house by elected leaders and advisors with respect to the land management as you are no doubt aware, the Blood Tribe falls under the Internet land management regime officially. However, they have basically done their own thing for many years. This has resulted in several lawsuits and much litigations. We don't believe a successful lawsuit can be launched based on the self-government negotiations because it would be difficult to establish damages at this point. A court would note that the membership will be given an opportunity to vote and can reach self-governments. So this is a letter and the answers were there to Kevin Quatts. Andrew Luce wrote, we have to have a vote. It is a constitutional right to vote and we cannot be dictated. It is, they are doing us wrong for what they're dictating their process on the land. So again, further to that, this is a letter that was given out by the Blood Tribe update on the February 1st, 2023. How can you uphold the treaties and to say that you successfully negotiated to save the treaties and move this whole process into maintain the treaties and negotiate the process of accepting a part of or accepting the recognition tables when it's only going to affect and help the few that are invested in the process, such as the acres claim. The acres claim is still owned by the county of Lethbridge, and at the same time, basically it's corporate numbers, it's previous chief and councillors who are on there that have investments in their benefits. So the people who are invested will benefit. For the rest of us that are not benefit will get nothing. So that's just how it goes, and that is they shouldn't be selling out the people because we elected them. And then Blood Tribe self-government implementation started. The Blood Tribe Attempts for Recognition of Rights discussion was in the early 1996 again by Roy and council before election, later failed government agreement. Okay, now go down next paragraph. The present day Blood Tribe Chief and Council 2024 have commenced their self-government process, including management of our Blood Tribe natural resources, land, water, oil sands, if any, gas, coal, minerals such as ammonite, renewable energies, wind and solar power. The lands, their self-proclaimed self-government on our land resources has been in the works for some time and is now being implemented through Blood Ban has utilized funding from reserve lands and environment management, RELMP, to develop capacity to manage reserve lands, resources, and environment. Those are some of the links that you can go on. The Blood Tribe land management is enforcing agriculture right now on agricultural lands and grazing lands, thus limiting self-sufficiency on occupants' lands. No farming, but increasing leasing to land to non-members, which is at the same time they have that control. They're trying to control the process of self-governancy. Kind of Environment Protection Agency, KEPA, has commenced self-governments with environmental issues and new projects designed to KEPA to enforce and control banned lands. So, water, a primary example of our water rights being negotiated through the self-government is the Blood Tribe Irrigation Project, BTAP, initiated in 1991. Chief and Council negotiated the head lease on from 1989 to 2032, and now from 2022 renewed head lease to 2068. Negotiations were conducted outside the Indian Act without consultation with the Blood Tribe membership and without tribal membership's ratification vote. Based on the Indian Land Registry Manual under 10. Section 1.2, Section 58(1)B of the Indian Act, Indian Lands Registry Manual. Acres Claim 1 and 2. My wife has spoke about the acres claim. The acres settlement lands or new lands had water rights. Water rights, think about it. The Blood Tribe had to deal with all encumbrances on those lands, and they elected to relinquish the water rights and settle with the Lethbridge Northern Irrigation Development and Alberta Environment without notification to the Blood Tribe membership. Oil and gas, non-renewable are oil and gas, minerals, and other resources, and are controlled by Indian Oil and Gas, IOGC, through legislation separate from the Indian Act. IOGC's comprehensive document deals with the Blood Tribe resources through Kaina Resources, KRI, their legal vehicle, which has been in place for some time. Alternative renewable energy. Alternative energy is wind power, hydro power, biomass, solar, geometrical energy, and other deals and partnerships have been through KRI in partnerships with this new outside investors and partners, including John P. Jurius, CEO, Indigena Capital, and Roy Fox, Chief of the Blood Tribe in Canada, without Blood Tribe memberships, consultation, and public notification or a referendum vote. And here is John Jurius, it says, in the 21st century, Indigenous nations still lack access to needed capital and partners. Indigenous emerging markets have been overlooked for decades. Indigena Capital was founded to address this need across all commercial sectors of Indigenous energy market. John P. Jurius, CEO of Indigena Capital. And here's our chief. If our goal is financial freedom, we must not rely on management by federal government. We must instead unshackle our rights and maximize our vast resources with the right capital partners. My question is to their leadership is this: why are you doing this without no notification, no consultation to the Blood Tribe members? That is wrong. We have a voice. We all belong and are treated rights. My number is 2733. I'm a Blood Tribe member, and so that is what's happening on the Amnesty Treaty. The Blood Tribe Chief and Council never consulted elders. This is why I gathered the elders here. Our Blood Tribe people for advice on their vast wisdom and knowledge about our existence. We need membership notification at all levels. The bottom line is this group of elected leaders are prepared to cut the strings from the federal government and assume full government authority of self-governance government process. So that is the research, that is the information we got from the government themselves. Andrew Luce, we have to have a vote. We cannot be pushed and by Chief of Council without notification. And I believe it's a criminal offense. So at that. Okay. Good morning to everybody. Just to let you guys know this, we're recording and we'll be putting this information on social media. And at the same time, we're it's important what we're doing. Our first speaker is going to be Eugene Fox, and he's going to be getting ready soon. And I'll just to recap what we talked about yesterday. We spoke about the recognition tables of Canada, which means self-governmency, and we spoke about the no consultation, no notification by our leaders, which has violated our constitutional rights as band members. And there's no accountability and transparency in regards to how they're on how they're providing any kind of information to the people, and we're just in the dark. So basically what we're doing is just these 2-day event, we're just sharing information, educating the people on where things are at. Yep.
Good morning, everybody. I'm here to I am representing our people. And it's mostly about our reserve land and the people and the generations below us. First of all, a lot of people do not understand the situation we're in. It's very critical and severe. Going over to the province makes us taxpayers. There was no consultation. There was a referendum that should have been done amongst the people to get our opinion. and coming to opinions. We all know that we would not vote for it because that eliminates our reservation land, our culture. Even affects where we have the Sundance and the Indian days. That'll be taxable land. And I can see no trespassing signs on that when it's owned by Denali. Why I say that is because, first of all, I'm not afraid to say this, but I have a document sent to me that our Chief Roy Fox, is a partnership with Indigena. And we got that information from concerned people from the United States, where Mr. John Jarius was kicked out of their reserve, sued, cannot go back there because he was borrowing money and lending it back to them on their resources. Same thing happens here. Who owns that hay plant? Most people are saying he does. It's taken over by the white people. Guys have gone out to hunt out there by the potato farms up there. White people are asking them, where's your permit to be out here? Why are you trespassing on our land? It's already happened. We have counselors here today that say, oh, we're not under the Indian Act. So why are they still taking a paycheck under the Indian Act? Why are they doing that? They're not doing any due diligence. They're looking out for themselves. They're not talking to anybody about this new land regime policy. Nobody's seen it. So what is it? What about the occupation policy on the lands? If you become municipal, they'll have their own municipal policing and they'll evict you whether you like it or not because it's not reserve land. It's scary. My mother is from Browning, Montana. Years ago, they turned some of their reserve into fee land. Took years and years to get some of it back and buy it back from the Napiquan. But remember, the politics down there are a lot different up here. We're under a prime minister that wants to eliminate us. We've had a minister of Indian Affairs that acted like a Native woman, but behind her back, she was trying to eliminate us too. And I'll mention her name, Caroline Bennett, because we communicated with her many times. Same old story. We had a forensic going on the Blood Indian Reserve and all of a sudden that disappeared because she was part of it. Because we didn't know at the time they have plans for a reserve. Do whatever you want, Chief and Council, because down the road, we're going to be able to negotiate with you on our terms. But continue doing what you do. So what I'm going to say is our land is our treaty. Our treaty is us. Our treaty is stronger than any law, any court in the world. And you can't breach it. So why is a foreign corporation like Canada breaching it? Why are our people on the reserve not questioning our leaders? Well, if we did, they don't know what's going on. Some don't even know what C-15 is. Bill C-15. Now, I've talked to one or two of them. And to my understanding, they didn't know a damn thing about this. They're just going with the flow. Because they think self-government means you're sovereign. You're not sovereign when you're self-government. You answer to somebody, and it's usually the Napiquan. So what I'm going to say is, right now, our land on the north end has been taken over by a white man. Our chief is in conflict of interest because he's part of Indigena, and it proved it down in Salt Lake City, Utah. The Kaina Energy Limited, where all our oil resources out there, is run by, it's called Kaina Energy Limited Partnership, LP, which is out of Texas. John Juris is out of Texas. So why has a white guy come into our reserve and taken over our reserve? I guess the person with the biggest dollar in his hand can do anything he wants. If we become fee land, anybody can come and buy this land. And where does that put us? I think everybody's going to be sitting in that park in Lethbridge with nowhere to go. We're landless. We're cultureless. You want to put on your dancing outfit, you're going to have to go rent a hall and have a powwow there like the Sportsplex in Lethbridge. It's what I see. But I'm going to get to this existing council we have today. They're not transparent. You phone them, they don't answer. You mail them, email them, send them a letter. Somebody intervenes. There's too many bosses above chief and council. They won't answer their calls. You can't even leave a message. So when they run for council, this last election, everybody had a fantastic platform. They're going to be transparent. They're going to honor businesses, farming, ranching, education. They're going to turn this reserve, more housing, food bank. They're going to work on a shelter and help people with addictions. That's their platform. That's the resume they hand you people, our people. And when they're not doing their job, what do? If someone's working for you, they can't do their job, you fire them. Because right now they think we're working for them. Chief and council work for you, and the people of the kind, I better wake up, because they're leading us over that cliff. And they're going to be looking down with a big bag of cash in their hand. That's the way I see it. Because nobody lets go of a cultural heritage, land, the children's future, grandchildren's future, even their own grandchildren, unless there's something at the end of the stick for them, a big carrot with cash. So what I'm going to say is, I was a 4th generation farmer. And when I was farming, everything was fine. I employed people, was a contractor. I built all that irrigation, 90% of it up there at BTAC. I built all the drop structures, Mukwan Ridge Reservoir spillway. I employed 54 people out there, and yet my equipment was always being vandalized. Now, the bottom line is, it doesn't matter if you're an Indian, you can't be successful out here, because if you are, it's Takanitapi. In my case, it was, I want some money under the table or I'm going to stop you. An individual came to me in 2013 working for the tribe and wanted some money under the table. And I told him, I don't do that. I'm not a white guy and I don't have that big of a land. I don't have the operating money like the white guy does. He got upset and said, okay, if that's the way it is, he left. Next thing, I'm in court being charged for farming without a permit. What did the treaty do for us? Said we could farm. How come these leaders didn't understand that? They took the information from a director, a land registrar, and they went full tilt and got me into court and stole 139,000 plus bushels of wheat off me. And the guy who farmed it didn't even have a section 28(1) and 2 permit to come in and steal my crop. But they supported him. Even the Blood Tribe Police supported him. So now if we become under this occupancy law, or whatever they want to call it, policy, are the same thing going to happen to us if they're Indian force or white force to come in and kick us out of here because we speak up? Every time somebody speaks up or questions them, they get punished. I got punished severely. They took land away from me that had a band council resolution on it. My father went in, sat with this individual and said, now this land, I'm transferring it to Eugene because he farms with me since he was 9 years old. I understand his legacy should carry on, mine and his grandkids. So what's going to happen to our grandkids? If I was so involved in doing things with our people on the reserve and helping them with livelihood by employing them, what are they going to do to people who have nothing to offer them? I know I didn't offer them any money under the table. I got punished for it. Second of all, the government said as long as there's one farmer on the reserve, you cannot be a land regime. So what did they do? They vandalized all my equipment. The police came and took pictures, did investigation for a week or so, and I contacted them and asked them any leads. They says no. The guy who was doing the investigation said, if I continue, my boss is going to kick my ass and I'm going to be fired. So what does that tell you? We're living in a regime, communist regime, that goes back several elections, and today is going to get worse. So I want to tell the people of the reserve, you better wake up, and you better wake up fast, because what's coming down the road is not good. We're going to see all our kids in that park on fentanyl. We're going to see our kids dead, suicidal. Is that what we want? The government wants to eliminate us because they owe us too much money. So they're willing to pay out $1 billion, maybe to every reserve to take over. That's what I see. Maybe you see something else. But I see out of that $1 billion, there's a carrot at the end of the stick, and somebody's grabbing it to take us down with the help of the white people. So why isn't Chief and Council meeting with the people and explaining all this to them? Because first of all, they don't understand it. If there's an executive summary, they'll leave it up to the law firm. The law firm is the one who's running the reserve. They can take me to court if they want to. But it's true. We've been in court with them. I can't explain anything, but I'm going to tell you, an executive summary is not a legal document and will never be a legal document unless all the people agree on it and make it into a contract or an agreement that is legal and binding. Nothing's legal and binding here. So what I'm going to say to the people of the Kainai, all the land that you have, even the non-land occupants, you know, I feel bad. Because even the non-land occupants, money is being collected by the land occupants to give to them. Recently, they gave them a few dollars. But when have they been taking it back? Taking that, deducting your land, that money, non-land occupant fund. Many years. Your land keeps getting smaller and they call it road allowances. Well, pretty soon this reserve is going to be one big road allowance, nothing. It's going to be a municipality with streets on it, avenues, municipality numbers, there will be no more number 148. I want to tell you people, whoever's giving you this information about what's coming, you better listen to them too. Our elders are not crazy. Sometimes they don't understand this stuff because they can't communicate. They don't have computers. Every elder I've sat with has been educated on this, and the first thing they say is, where is our chief? Where is our council? Why aren't they sitting down and telling us, what do you want to do? Do you want to fight this? Of course we'd like to fight this, and that's what we're doing. When Idle No More came forward, it took a group of women to make the world know what was going on. It took a group of people to know what was happening in the residentials and all the abuse and lawsuits and the people that created this mess, the government. So now why are we selling out to the government? The government doesn't care about us. It started out with, we will hold your land and money and trust. And they took all that. Now they're saying we ceded and surrendered our land. We never did. The treaty was bogus. So why are our leaders not answering to us? So that's why I'm saying they're not working for you and they're not doing a good job. You can fire them. And believe me, you vote them in, you can vote them out. Because as far as I'm concerned, in my heart and in my mind, even today, I'm firing every one of them. Because they're incompetent, they're non-transparent, and to me, they don't know what's going on. Now I'm going to tell them, there's a message to them. We become under the municipality. You think we're going to have a chief and council? We're going to be like Lethbridge. They're going to be called aldermans. You don't even want to run because there's no big travel, there's no big wages, there's no holidaying at the Indian National, Fine Oaks, Vegas, etc., Stampede. However, if you get something at the end of this, you'll have a lot of money to do that. And what are the people going to do? Give them a system. So I want to tell you something. This land belongs to all of us. It belongs to our children's children. Not council. One chief, one heredity, non-existing chief. That's an Indian Act chief. And I'll guarantee you, you can never and will never run a little country like the Blood Reserve sitting behind a slot machine. That's as good as it's gotten. So I want to thank you for listening to me, because what I'm saying is true. Thank you very much. Are you there, Roger?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Eugene.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna do while the next speaker is coming on, I'll do a little bit of an update on the recognition tables. And here's a short film that we did. This was donated by the Suzuki Foundation for Ron, and this is a message. It's across Canada for all First Nations to stand up it's about the environment and the how precious our lands are that we come from. So at that note, I'll put it on place and then while I get ready for the presentation. This is a message to all the people throughout Turtle Island. Look at this beauty of this land we have, the spirit world that we have in this area for all the Billy Buttes. These elders are here guiding us and letting us know that we have to maintain the treaty rights. As long as this world exists, we should stay who we are. I am Blackfoot, and I will always advocate for this land. Okay, and then how to get the PowerPoint? Go there. Okay, I'm back on and I go here. PowerPoint, yeah. We gotta share. All right, and go back into Zoom. Okay, you better do that. My finger's too heavy. Thank you. There we go. I have There we go. Alrighty. So put this one down. Move this one up. Okay, okay. This is on the recognition tables of Canada again, just to recap on the message. This is why we gathered the people together. The recognitions of tables was designed by designed by the government. The very first white paper was in 1969, and that was brought by Pierre Elliott Trudeau, and that was to get us assimilated through the to lose our treaty rights. So the government and the white people have not stopped. I don't know what if they feel they're going to fully conquer Canada, but the way I look at it is that these little islands and reserves are basically, they're here to protect our treaty rights and the environment of Canada, like coal mines, and then uranium, oil, you name it. We have one of the most beautiful, places in the country, Montana and Alberta, along the Rocky Mountains, and yet the corporation structures are here to destroy it for the almighty dollar. And then the recognition tables, after that was the red paper, the Buffalo Jump paper, the failed government reform, and then the white paper was picked up again by Junior, the Prime Minister of Canada now, Trudeau. So all First Nation treaties are entrenched in the Constitution Act of Canada. The recognition of rights discussion tables set you to lose treaty lands by tribal leaders across Canada. This way, the government is not to blame. However, most cases, there is no vote and no consultation by our leaders, which have violated our constitutional rights, which is a criminal offense. So at that note, right now, where we're at with our leadership, we have no consultation of any kind. The only consultation we get is this document that they call it communique on their webpage, And that's the only information that we get. There's no band meetings, there's no consultation of any kind. And basically, the way it's designed right now, the Blood Tribe has lead negotiators. And these lead negotiators are the ones that basically agree for all of us, all the Blood Tribe people. And I do believe this goes across Canada also. Every tribe has a lead negotiator that make decisions for the people without even the people's knowledge, which is a violation of the constitutional rights of how we exist our treaties are entrenched in the Constitution. So the recognition table is basically, again, this is here on this screen, the recognition of rights discussions. So it just shows you, I just wanted to show you the, how many people have gotten on the process of about the recognition of Indigenous rights and self-determinations. So all these people were probably on a table without notifications or votes by their tribes. And I believe this is a status quo. If this happened to us, it's happening across the table. So if you look at British Columbia in the bottom, look at how many people there are. And then from there, we'll go into, these are still all British Columbias again. And then the next one is then we get into Alberta. This particular document, I printed it out a while back. If you were to go onto the recognition tables today, what's going to happen is all they're going to say is update information. They're no longer, it's been updated for about 4 years now, and they have not added any more names on, but they're withholding all the names now. And then so you could see here in Alberta, Blood Tribe, and then Métis Nation of Alberta, Métis settlement, Sawridge, Stoney, Nakota, and Treaty 6 First Nation, Treaty 8, they're all on the recognition tables. And the way I understand the recognition tables is it takes 5 years from the time they signed the MOU. For us guys, our leadership signed, they got on the MOU 2018. So 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23, the Blood Tribe will be off the tables July 5th, midnight, 2023. That's only just a couple of months away. And at the same time, they are saying that they renegotiated the treaties, they've, that we could maintain treaty and join this process. But I would have to say, they were not notified properly by their legal. The legal system is all a part of, and basically just siphoning the monies from them. They can't even think for themselves, as Eugene said. We have to, our leaders have to stand up and be leaders, and and not have a white guy telling them how to think while they spend the monies. So at that note, we get into there. So 2013, 2023, we're off the tables. Then we could get pushed into self-governmency process. So the next one is this Manitoba. Look at all the names that are on there. And you guys have my contact numbers out there. I will certainly provide this document to anybody that requests it across Canada. And Ontario, right up in this area, how many people they have on our recognition tables. Then we have Quebec, the Atlantic, Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and the Yukon. So this just shows you how many people have gone on the recognition tables. So getting back to the Blood Tribe, participating Indigenous communities with the Blood Tribe, when the discussions began was 2017. They signed on July the 5th, 2018, the parties signed a memorandum of understanding on reconciliation. And so there's related links there if it would follow that. And then so basically now, without notification by our leadership, we're there. So we spoke with, wrote letters to the government and to the peoples. And then this is interesting. I contacted the Crown Indigenous Relations Canada, the federal government department. and then Stephen Cohan. And he did not answer me for about 3 emails. And finally, I advised them that I will go to Globe and Mail and give this that they're not reporting this information to us, that we want to just post it in the news. So we got a letter from Andrew Luth on November 23rd at 2022, 6:25 a.m. And basically what he said was, I will read it. I work with Stephen Cohan, and he has asked me to acknowledge receipt of your letters. Both emails have been received, and there are many details to go through and consider. While I think your concerns might be most directly addressed to the Blood Tribe administration, I can assure you that self-determination discussions do take a long time, and that any potential final agreement would not be ratified in a vote by First Nations. So basically, the way I read this information is basically they're washing their hands from from the process that we have to deal with with our leaderships. Then again, if that's what they're saying, then so be it. We'll deal with the leaderships in this process of with non-consultation, non-notification. They have breached our constitutional rights as Blood Tribe members. We are sovereign, and we push them into to be our elected leaders. That doesn't mean they're up here. They work for us, guys. That's what the elders would say. Apo Tomokia. So this is just a letter again after November 7th, 2022. That was when I wrote a letter to Stephen Cohan. And then basically, I'll just scroll down here. This is interesting right in this part. The Blood Tribe attempts for recognition of rights discussion tables was in early '96 and was accepted by our leadership and council before the election, and later failed government attempt. So at that note, it just shows you, from that year of 90, from that year, they've been trying to do a self-governmency without notification to the people. So, and then, hold on, how do you get the screen off here? This blank.
It doesn't show.
Doesn't show now? Okay, all right. Okay, great, all right. So anyways, so getting back to the, to the letter, all I'm saying is we have the right to vote, and the chief and council, they have to be accountable and transparentable to the people. With respect to all treaty members throughout Canada, the concerns regarding the government recognition of rights negotiation tables. The government should know that no such agreement can or will be put in place without all treaty members voting in favor of approving the agreement. There are few First Nations and standalone of self-government agreements in the country, and they normally take many years to negotiate. The membership was not informed about the negotiations, consent, or approval of the memberships. This will not necessarily stop the negotiations, but the recognition department should be very careful to ensure the community is fully informed and consulted before a vote is held to approve the agreement. All treaty members throughout Canada and everybody affected by the recognition tables, on and after who are eligible to vote, be given notice of the vote, and it should be held throughout all the communities throughout Canada that were notified about the recognition tables. So, what currently our leadership, we have lead negotiators, and the lead negotiator, were self-appointed by council. We did not vote to have Dorothy First Rider to be lead negotiator to represent my vote in regards to the concerns of the reserve, because the reserve is collaboratively owned. Mga domestic schools, ito nito, we're all a part of. And before that, the lead negotiator was another counselor, Kirby Manyfingers. He made decisions that impacted our sovereignty. There was no ratification vote by the Blood Tribe people to allow Blood Tribe Chief and Council to decide on behalf of the Blood Tribe memberships to have a lead negotiator to make major decisions on behalf of the Blood Tribe members. There is absolutely no transparency, accountability, and this violates the Blood Tribe's right to vote in all decisions, especially our treaty rights are collaboratively owned by the Blood Tribe membership. So when we understand that this letter that wrote to Kevin Cohen, the Blood Tribe membership never relinquished our rights to one person to lead negotiators for the Blood Tribe people. This was done in-house by elected leaders and advisors. With respect to the land management, as you are no doubt aware, the Blood Tribe falls under the Indian land management regime. Officially, however, they basically done their own thing for many years. This has resulted into several lawsuits and much litigations. We don't believe a successful lawsuit can be launched based on self-governancy negotiations because it would be difficult to establish damages at this point. I would note that the membership will be given an opportunity to vote and can reject self-government. So basically what they're saying in their own words, the way I understand is our treaties are still entrenched in the constitutional rights. And by allowing our leaderships to be runaway governments doing what they want, just like what our previous speaker said, being unaccountable and non-transparentable, they are violating our rights. We have a right to terminate and begin a process of a new accountability. We are the membership. We are the ones that will say what and what the direction that we want to go in this process of in this life of this recognition tables. Either we want it or don't want it. And at the same time, we also have to look at this the people. We gripe about things. We gripe about everything and we cannot unify. We can't seem to connect. How can you what see you? And then that's one of the things that this is what the government has successfully passed on us through the brainwashing of residential school, is not being able to collaboratively work together. And at the same time, we're too hard on each other. That is how the government is controlling us, and they're ceding our territory without us too busy in-house fighting. At the same time, as an example, we have been advocating for this process about the common plow and now this recognition tables, and there will be other things that would be recognizing and working with down the road. But at the same time, with in-house gossip is one of the worst things that take down people who try. We have very good people, very good leadership that have good ideas, but that that anger, that jealousy, it runs so deep. We have become the I would just say the repressed are now the repressors. That's how hard we are on each other. I'll use it as an example. We work really hard. We've sunk in a lot of money, our own personal money into this process. And then the next thing I hear that I was bought $44,000 by the bank, me and my colleague. But I wish I had $44,000. I shouldn't pay off the $6,300 that we owe our lawyers right now. Every lawyer wants money. So basically we have sunk in everything that we had. And just like what my son said, if I had 44,000, I'd probably have a nice truck right now. But at that point, it's just let them believe what they want to do, but let's support the cause. If you have a cause, you guys stand up and pay your lawyers. But at the same time, all I'm saying is this: we've gone as far, we're educating the people. We have to work together. And politics is politics. Don't let politics rule you in hate. Let politics roll together and as a team. We'll be a stronger nation that way. So that's what I had to speak about that one, and I'll go further down. So basically, right now, the Blood Tribe Self-Government's information has begun without, without vote and chief and council. So these are just some of the things that have happened. Again, the Blood Tribe attempts for recognition of rights discussion tables was in '96 and was accepted by Roy and council before that election, and later failed government agreement, final agreement ratification vote in 2012 to stop self-government's process. Again, the discussion started when Roy was elected in 2016. The discussions began in 2017, and a milestone is this coming July. Today is actually June the 2nd, next month. Exactly, almost a month away, we'll be getting off the recognition tables. And then what they're doing, like what Charlene said yesterday, was basically, here on this, in the mainstream, they vote about one thing. But you still know what they do is just like in a recognition table, as an example, as she provided, the draft of the document is about this thick. The government, it's our leadership's responsibility to notify everybody about the tribe, what we're doing. But instead, they provided summaries without explanations of the process. And then at the same time, then they want us to vote for the settlement agreement. And then at the same time, they say the government wants us to sign a trust agreement. But according to what I read, spoke with some of these people, that trust agreement, it's up to the leadership as to, what they want to do with that trust agreement is basically the leadership will control the money. But at the same time, if you look at entitlement in any way of all the distribution across Canada, back in, shot both sides, then we first got to 2000, they just provided the money as a gift. Today, there's always underlying effects of control now. So basically, our leaderships are now following corporation structures that they have, how to say, they have hidden interests in there, such as the acres claim. The acres claim will be here. My wife and I got the records from the Lethbridge Registrar office. We paid $20 a paper. Anybody could go there and get it. So, and what we found out in the acres claim was very basic. It was numbered companies, a corporate number, and this number, corporate number, exists in Calgary. There's no names on there. The land is still owned by the county of Lethbridge, and they're trying to sink $28 million on that land for a casino. That doesn't make any sense. Charlene and I said, look at the people they're kicking off the reserve. Look at the people. I work in the IRC office here in Lethbridge. I see families that got kicked out from housing in town, said they're now in town. They're sleeping in the streets of winter, huddling up together. And now there's a high addiction problems of this, this drug that's out there. And that's affecting every family. And then they're turning a blind eye to the reality of the existence of the people. So at this point in time, all I'm saying is this, the people will have to also, open their eyes and see the reality of where we're at. And at the same time, getting back to the trust agreements, we have a right. They work for us, but we have to stand up together as one. And that goes to the people across Canada also. So further down, Lands Department, what Eugene was talking about. Their self-proclaimed self-government on our land resources. Think about it. Their self-proclaimed self-government on our land resources. The self-government process hasn't even started. We have to get off the table July the 5th, 2023, then it becomes legal. Right now, they're illegally doing self-government, see. And so, and how far has this gone back? And then our land resources have been in the works for some time and is now being implemented through blood ban, has utilized funding from reserve lands and environment management programs, RLEMP, to develop capacities to manage reserves and land resource environment. Quote, China Environment Protection Agencies, KEPA, has commenced self-government with environmental issues and new projects designed to KEPA to enforce and control banned lands. Again, where was the notification? Where was the vote? You know, we weren't notified. And who was this lead negotiator I did not, we did not vote for a lead negotiator, and I would like to charge these lead negotiators because they don't represent us. They are falsifying this information, and that's a criminal offense in my book. So, and then, so next one is we go into the Blood Tribe Irrigation Project, BTAP, that was initiated in 1991. Chief and Council negotiated one head lease on from 1989 to 2032. That's that waterway, the canal. And two, now from 2022, renewed head leases to 2068. That is a very, very big decision. And we were notified on that. That was produced on the on a BTAP report. And I believe this is also connected to this John Jurius, this indigenous takeover of the reserve, which is also, it's not, not notified to the people. We were notified, again, who are these people to be illegally doing this thing? One of the elders told me and said, Roger, I honestly do not think our leaderships are that intelligent. And I just looked at him and he said, there's got to be bigger people behind that. And now I figured it out. I've seen it. It's indigenous and the government in losing our rights on the recognition tables. So negotiations were conducted outside the Indian Net without consultation with the Blood Tribe members and without tribal memberships ratification vote. Every one of these cases, there was no vote by the people. How could they push it through without the people's consent? Based on the Indian Land Registry Manual under 10.1.2, section 58, subsection 1B of the Indian Land Registration Manual. Okay, now we get to the acres claim. The acres settlement lands or new lands had water rights. The Blood Tribe had to deal with they had to deal with the water rights, Well, by them dealing with this water rights, what they have done is basically, they have relinquished our water rights on the Red Reserve. And that is such a big loss that we have, because there's an X gold. This is what we're heading to in this world, is water. And if you go into the top of the buttes and you look down, you look west, you look south, you see all the rivers coming down and all meeting in standoff. Unbelievable. Just like in that film I showed you guys, look at that wall that we have. That's the next gold on that one. And now they've relinquished the water rights due to the acres claim. So at the same time, let me go into I have one more thing here. Okay, the Blood Tribe had to deal with all encumbrances on those lands, and they elected to relinquish the water rights and settled with Lethbridge Northern Irrigation Development and Alberta Environment without notification of the Blood Tribe membership. So again, they did it without our vote. They worked for us, and we have to hold them accountable. That's like what Eugene says, that's accountability, transparency. It's an open book to be taking money for themselves. Every travel allowance they get, but that money belongs to the people also. Oil and gas. This is interesting. Non-renewable Non-renewables are oil and gas, minerals, other resources. Other resources are controlled by Indian Oil and Gas, IOGC. Through legislations throughout the Indian net, IOGC in comprehensive document the blood tribe resources through the kind of resources, KRI, the legal vehicle which has been in place for some time. And guess what? Indigena is also connected to the Indian Oil and Gas. So the John Jurius. Alternate renewable energy. Alternative energy is wind power, hydropower, biomass, solar, geothermal energy, and other deals with the partnerships I have been through KRI on partnerships with new outside investors and partners, including John P. Jurius, CEO of Indigena Capital, and Roy Fox, Blood Tribe in Canada, without the Blood Tribe members' consultation or proper notification or referendum vote. That land doesn't belong to an individual's. This land belongs to everybody. And if these people want to relinquish their treaty rights, they should just go disenfranchise themselves from the band and go do what they're going to do out there in the corporate world. But they should not be putting us in jeopardy, your children, my children, our great grandchildren, for the next 500 years for personal gain and you know, just basically actually to be, thinking they're, they could do anything, like they're not gods. Let's put it that way. They have to be held accountable. It's very strong words that we're saying today, but this gets back to this guy, John Jurius. I understood that, John Jurius was a part of the with the Utes, and a few years back, 1985, our leadership went down and they went to see the Utes, and then they introduced John Jurius. And since then, the Utes have sued this, Indigena over there for $1 billion. And now, guess where he appears now? Is on the blood reserve, and with Indigena taking over the Blackfoot Confederacy. And he says in the 21st century, indigenous nations will lack access to needed capital and partners. Indigenous energy markets have been overlooked for decades. Indigenous capital was founded to address this need across all commercial sectors of indigenous emerging markets. It's simply a money grab of a business and control of a few. For every diamond mine, for every oil, oil operations, for any kind of businesses, there's one rich Indian. The rest of us are not going to benefit from this thing. This is our land. We have to stand up and say no to it. So then our leader, our fearless leader says, if our goal is financial freedom, we must not rely on management by the federal government. We must instead unshackle our rights and recognize our vast resources with the right capital partner. Okay, getting back to Acres claim, how many of previous counselors have their names as investors in that property? I don't have it in, my kids don't have any part of that. We're not going to benefit from that land. And that land was purchased by Blood Tribe money, but Ukiwetapi's money. And at the same time, we should know exactly what they're doing. Not as one particular person that, runs it, and says, they're saying that with an engineer out there saying that, put 2 million here, 3 million here. Gee, that's just wrong, and walking around with, not notification. And now we're speaking out. Everybody is hiding. How come they cannot come to us and we meet face to face and have a good talk to let us know why this thing's going to work? Explain yourselves. Why are you guys cowarding, behind closed doors? Meeting here in Lethbridge, just coming down here, I looked at all the names of the meeting. Why are you guys meeting here? We have band council chambers over there. Why are you spending money, Let the people know, have band operations. So the next thing is I'm going to say one thing. In this treaty, the Blood Tribe Chief Council never consulted elders or Blood Tribe people for advice on their vast wisdom and knowledge about our existence. We need membership notifications at all levels. The bottom line is the group of elected leaders are preparing to cut the strings from federal government and assume full government authority of self-governmency process without the people's consent. Kena, hukakito it's about our children, the next 500 years. We should be 68 to be. What our ancestors fought for. And this leadership is selling us out. Okay, thank you. And I don't apologize, but I said what I said.
Members, it's guys on the table.
Okay, and then this one here is this one came, Shikshikai seated the recognition table 2021. Further to that, Rocket members also need to ask their leaders if they're on the table. So there's so many questions that Otapisan has to wake up to. And at that note, there's not much more to say. I think I've said everything I had to, and thank you for listening to me. And so I'll pass that around to Neil, and who's the next speaker?
Janice at 11.
Okay.
Roger, who's the next speaker? Roger. Are you there? Oh, sorry, I can, okay, thank you.
That's okay. Good morning, Situate, Sidapi, and Turtle Island, all First Nation people. The recognition paper, especially the Blood Tribe, we need to start asking our leadership what is on the table for the recognition that and how it's gonna affect us. There's some leaders saying that we're already on self-governmency, but we didn't have a vote. And remember, when we have a vote on there, if it says we're having a distribution, this will be hidden under there. You vote yes for the distribution, you're also voting yes for this. So they're being very sneaky. They're being very underhanded and trying to trick us. So please, membership, ask our leaders, and our leaders should be notifying the tribe what is behind this document, not just a thin summary. We will need to find details. How thick the plow and cow was, everything the membership needs to know. It's for our future generation. We must maintain our treaty rights and keep our land. And we should be doing something about our north end. There's a lot of non-land owners that need to speak up too. If our tribe and leadership really wanted to help our people, there's 4 buses that immigrants are coming on to the forage plant. And they're working at the forage plant where our Blood Tribe members should be working. They should have helped them by busing them to work. If our leadership really wanted to help their people, that's what they'll be doing. not be giving these jobs out to the immigrants. That is what's happening. So thank you for listening to me. I'm gonna really keep pushing. We need to know what's all on this recognition table. Everything. And they're saying that we're not on the table. There's Russ Diabo or Dio. I'm not. Russ Diabo. On his website, you could go on there and Roy Fox is signing the recognition table. There's proof right there. City Guide. You could probably go on that website too. I think he has the updated list of who's all on the recognition table. So throughout Turtle Island, check out his website. The membership throughout Canada need to start speaking out. It's for the future of our children, even the unborn. So thank you.
There's another thing that I want to share. This is a elite document that we have here. And then right now, I would say the proof is right here. It is in regards to Sikshikai Nation. And this is a memorandum of understanding between Sikshikai and Her Majesty the Queen. So basically, they got on the recognition table, was signed by Carolyn Bennett, August the 9th, 2021, and Chief Allred Crowfoot Sikshikai Nation, August the 9th, 2021, and it was signed, and the recognition tables, that's when they got on. So 2021, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, you guys will be off. And so this document, basically it's a leaked document. I'm sharing you the date and time. So I'm hoping Sikshikai is listening also, that they have to ask questions to their leaderships. Like, it's not a dictator leaderships. This is it goes across Canada. The people have to stand up and ask their questions, their leaders questions. So the end result of that is basically, I bet you guys would be surprised at how much clout the people have. A lot of us actually, we get upset and we just, never mind. But the thing is this, as the elders would say, so.
All right, thank you, Roger. Just a note again that I wanted to mention to the people of the Blood Reserve, Roy Fox has committed 450,000 acres of Blood Reserve land to John Jurius and affiliated entities. Now, they partnered up with Jurius, an American from Texas, Colorado, Utah, and now Calgary as a head office in Calgary. There's obligated this land to him. There's another 200,000 acres obligated for exploration for natural resources with China Energy limited partnership. And it says they're going to develop it in the Big Valley. Well, the Big Valley I know is the Northern Reserve, where I used to haul crude oil. So I just needed the people to know that. Now, and then when we talk about BTAP, and you mentioned that the hay foraging plant, it is committed to John Jurius. As far as I'm concerned, it was sold to him. Now, in 2004 to 2008, my trucking company was contracted to haul crude oil out of the Blood Indian Reserve. I hauled 66% of the total oil out of there, while two other trucks hauled the rest for Plains Marketing under the Buena Vista. They were the producer. Now, this oil is 810 density, green sweet. the best oil in the world to market. You practically make jet oil out of it when it's processed and refined. There's no bill of ladings. The blood reserve doesn't know exactly how much oil is leaving. One time, one of the KR directors said we were processing 500 barrels a day. Well, I hold over 3,000 barrels in one load, 3 times a day. That was 9 loads going out a day. It's 2,700 barrels a day, and we could never empty those wells up there. So how much oil is really leaving the reserve? That's why there's such an interest in John Jury's coming here to develop the best oil in the world. We were getting a royalty of, I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but some years we made 8 million. We should have been making 800 million. Now in 2007, I reported some stolen oil. It took a little while to investigate. Then I was suspended. Instead of being rewarded for reporting stolen oil and proving it, they took away my haul because it was dipping into somebody's wallet. Now, what I'm going to say is the oil out there will never last forever. So why aren't our leaders taking advantage of such a good product and banking in on it for our people instead of spending it and cutting deals under the table? I'm not afraid to say that, because why was oil stolen and why was it I reported it, and why was I punished instead of rewarded? So this amount of land that is going to John Jury's is just an example that it's open season here. How many people are going to bid on this land? John Jury's is a billionaire. He may and probably will want to own the whole reserve because it's full of resources, ammonites, uranium, oil, natural gas, and lots of water, productive farmland. None of the farmers this year received a contract or signed a 3-year, as far as I'm concerned. I talked to the farmer and I asked him, what are you doing this year? Are you signing a contract to be here? And he says, no, I'm just told to farm it for this year. So why aren't they being committed? They usually get a 3-year contract. And as far as I'm concerned, there's still no farming permits, Section 28, 1 and 2 of the Indian Act for farmers to be here. There hasn't been anything here since 2007. In 2007, the money was not sent to the Receiver General from the farmers and trees paying in for leased land. So the Blood Reserve lost their permitting. They couldn't get permits for these, but they hid it well, and the farmers didn't know that. So it put a lot of people in jeopardy. In 2014, I was charged for farming without a permit. They took my grain, as I mentioned, took away some of my land, made an announcement on TV, global TV leopard, saying that I was stopped from farming because I didn't have the right permits to farm my lands. That's on video. So what kind of rights do we have here to exist? Why can't we farm and ranch? Because that land is going to be designated for the non-native people, the people that pay lots of money under the table. Now, I will never pay favors to my own people that receive a paycheck for that are supposedly to doing our job. And myself, like I said, I wasn't rich, but I worked hard. And I took care of a lot of people. I was hauling the containers from the hay plant. I had 2 guys I trained to get a class 1 and ran the containers up there. But however, I was told if I run lesser than a white guy, I'll keep my job. Well, why should I take less when I pay the same amount of fuel, fuel, tires, insurance? So why are our leaders belittling us in the economical way of surviving? Is that, to me, again, I think there's just too damn much jealousy here. So it's crab in the bucket syndrome. I mean, I never got rich being on council or doing anything except hard work. And I'm a 4th-generation farmer. I sat on a tractor with my father since I was 9 years old, pulled a lot of the rock that we, from the land that was gumbo, wasn't even supposed to be farmed. It was so rugged, but it took us years to develop it and make it productive. So a lot of people think you're going to get rich farming. You'll eat well. but there's not a lot of money at the end of the table because of the pricing. If you need lots of land to survive, I didn't have a lot of land, but a lot of heart. So what I'm going to say again is beware of what's happening here. There are things that are going on right now that they're not telling you about. And again, I'll mention, a lot of them don't know what's going on. So it's time they sit with us, meet with us. They need to talk to us and let us know what they really understand, because to me, I don't think they understand anything. The ones that do are the ones that are going to get something out of it. And that's the sad part. They're supposed to be working for us. They're supposed to be our leaders. Today, there are no leaders until you prove it. Today, I haven't seen any proof. And getting back to this irrigation VTAP that the John Jurius has purchased from the reserve. I built most of the 1990 up to 94, 95. I had a crew up there, about 50 people at scrapers, track holes, built part of the canal, all the drop structures. I built a good leg of the pipelines, a lateral lay, Ford Road under 509. Put into turnouts, multi-structures, you name it. I was out there for 5-6 years. And at the end of the project, there were several other native contractors I'm very proud of are still going today. The government pulled us in and said, I'm very proud of you guys. What you have done is a milestone, a landmark here. What you have done is you built the future for your future farmers, irrigation farmers. This project was started so that people who wanted to farm out there become hay farmers. The opportunity is here. However, before that meeting was even over, some of these leaders were already cutting deals with guys to lease the permits that weren't even First Nations because they offered money under the table back in the early 90s. And I spoke to one of them. He's not alive today. But he said, boy, did I have to pay a lot of money under the table to get out there. And I thought that was irrigation was for your native farmers. Never happened. So nothing is planned for us anymore because there's too much influence. It's money, the government, greed, jealousy, laziness. Anybody who wants work can make it. And there's a lot of people here that want to work, but the jobs are given to the non-natives because they pay under the table. One day I was driving through Lethbridge and I seen several men in the park drinking Lysol, and I felt bad and my heart almost broke because I used to work with these guys. They were tradesmen. Why are these tradesmen who had a family doing well, sitting in a park with their heads down? Because there was no work. And I asked one of them, why are you here? He said, there's nothing for us back home. So right now there's going to be a lot less and more headache, more drugs, and more drinking, more suicide, overdose, ODing, overdosing from drugs. There's nothing's done about it. Right now we have 4 or 5 major drug dealers in our community, and where's the police? They make a bust here and there, big deal. That doesn't answer the problem of all the deaths we've had. We've had an average of 2 a day when you can't put them all together. So I'm asking our leaders today, and I hope they're listening. Where are you? What are you going to do about this mess you've created? And the ones who haven't, who didn't understand it, start reading. Start talking to people like us who know what's going on. You said you were transparent in your platform. Prove it now before it's too late. Because nobody wants to walk with their head down the rest of their lives when this is all over. Thank you.
At this note, I'd like to introduce Janice Switlow. And he was basically Eugene had highly recommended her. And then from what I was advised, hey, I'll tell you guys what, listen to her and everything will unravel. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Janice.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the honor of joining your circle today. It's not often I sit among the fiercest warriors that the Crown had ever had to deal with. I'm gonna address some of what I heard this morning, but first I want to put this to you. Really, what is your starting position? Before anything else, there's a big decision to be made. And I want to be clear. I speak about nations and sovereignty and how to enforce and use treaties. I'm the one that pointed out the agenda for Canadian governments in terms of turning you into domestic ethnic minorities, Indigenous Canadians. And it really is a matter of deciding, are you going to continue as your ancestors did, following your original instructions? Or are you going to cut that chain, cut that link? Are you going to agree that your ancestors were just beasts of the field, as the doctrine of discovery says? And then go for what the Dominion of Canada governments want you to be. They've always been really choked that they didn't get what they wanted. And ever since the time of treaty, you have been pushed and starved and oppressed to try to get you to give up, to abandon. I'm here to say you don't have to do it that way. You don't have to do that. The foundation is here. The so-called reconciliation, how to share together is already set out. But unfortunately, as was mentioned yesterday, there's been interruptions. The residential school is a big one. The other was lawyers not being able to act for you because of threat of prison, even accepting money to help and to write anything. But I want you to understand where I'm coming from. But it's so that you can understand what I'm speaking about is not some theory. It's not some, this could be the best way to go. It's not like, here's the solution to the problem that I have dreamed up and I'm going to convince you to follow me to do. The Western approach is very much a competition of, no, follow me, no, follow me. No, I have the answer. It's important to understand that it's the process that matters the most. When people are part of the circle and coming there from a good place, ready to give, not coming in to take, to make their millions off the backs of your suffering. When you have a process that is respectful of your laws and who you are, there are good outcomes. But if you have people coming into that who are, as I said, just interested in their self-profit, the outcomes aren't going to work. So this concept of who should I follow? Who makes the most sense? Who do I think knows more? That's not the process. First, decide who are you and know what you have. Then understand fully what treaties allow you to do, what your laws allow you to do. And then understand the agenda, the genocidal agenda that has placed you in this position where individuals are acting to, well, at least I'll make something, at least my family will be provided for. The concept of 500 years later doesn't matter. I just have to worry about what I can get right now. Some of these individuals actually think, well, they'll be respected and seen as white. But once their usefulness is done, then they may have some short-term income, but they will never have that respect. The laughing, what I have witnessed that I cannot necessarily share is not a fate I would wish on anyone. Now, what am I talking about? With me, I'm in a very unique position. There was talk that, well, your understanding of your laws and such were interrupted very seriously with residential schools. But not for me. And let me explain this. There were now ancestors who visited your ancestors who were present at treaty. And the ancestors that we're visiting were from coastal Salisha. As a young man, particularly Chief Notlachaw, kind heart, as a younger man, was educated, thoroughly educated by your ancestors about treaty. Why was this important? Because the treaty making hadn't continued on the West Coast. British Columbia said, we don't really have to do this. We don't want to do this. We don't have money for this. We're just going to keep taking and asserting sovereignty as it's come to be known. So he was there to understand, and this is well before BC treaty process and things like that, land claims, all that. So he went there to really understand what went down. What are these treaties? What happened? He takes that knowledge back to his people, the coastal Salishan and interior Salishan. And that's where I was born and raised in their territory, in Greater Vancouver. That information then was given to me. I thought it odd, my being how I appear, my background. But I've come in more recent years to really understand and to really believe what I was told, that and this is a lot of interior Salishan elders, especially, who did the same thing in terms of bringing me into their laws, to their governance. I have witnessed and seen. I've not just read in textbooks that, oh yeah, you may have done that. And I don't talk past tense. Yesterday's speaker always talking past tense. You're here, you're alive, the nations are functioning. Yes, severely oppressed. Yes, that's severely unlawful, etc. But I've seen it with my own eyes. I have sat in places on the Indigenous nation side where clearly younger people were distressed to see me entering. Like, what is she doing there, right? And being literally sometimes held off, right, by those that say, no, don't you question. And I have seen where most members, most of the families in the nation are not part of, because this is the executive, if you will, dealing with their obligations and such, their economy, their economic sovereignty. So all that information that was transferred from your ancestors, off to the West, then comes into me. So there's an unbroken channel there, because of course I didn't go to residential school. And again, it was like, well, our people aren't ready to carry this. We need someone who will know when to share these things, when they're needed, when to sound the alarm, when to be our voice when we can't physically be there, but we will always be with you. So that's on your side of things. Now let's take the other side on terms of Canadian governments. Well, I was in-house Department of Justice Legal Counsel for Indian Affairs, Indian and Northern Affairs Canada, as it was then known. And before that, I was Revenue Canada Taxation, Customs and Excise Legal Counsel. So moving into a field, being asked to move over in an area I knew nothing about, but this is hard to speak of myself, but I've a very good, keen legal mind. But I had a lesson in law school where the dean of the law school called me in after the first exam taken. And he asked me why I discontinued a line of thought that I had set out in my exam paper. And I said, well, I realized you hadn't taught that, because I was very much, before law school, I never had to study. I said, you didn't teach that. He says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you didn't teach it. So you dish back what you're taught to get the good grades, right? So he says, well, tell me now what you were thinking. And so I explained how I disagreed with a finding of a case, etc. Long story. I fully set out my analysis and such. And he sat me down and he says, if you would have, and by the way, I'd only gotten a C. I'd never had a C in my life, except for gym. Gym, I got a D once. I'm not, even though I like team sports, gymnastics, not for me. So anyhow, he said, if you had set that out, I would have given you an A. And he said, I'm going to leave you. I'm going to ask you a question now. He says, are you going to be a lawyer? And I said, yeah, obviously I wanted to be one since I was like 5. And he said, well, you got to decide now. We don't need any more of these people that just fill in the blanks. Those are not real lawyers. We need lawyers who are going to correct the law when it's out of line, because we have a system in law that's based on precedent. So one judge decides something, the next judge is bound to decide the same way, and it goes and goes and goes. Unfortunately, that can lead the law really off track. That's happened with Section 35, which I will get into later. And so he says, it's your responsibility. If you're going to be a real lawyer, then you need to know that you have every right to make statements on the law, to correct the legal analysis, even if it's a Supreme Court of Canada judge that's wrong. Because, as law students, we sort of look at judges as gods almost, especially Supreme Court of Canada justices. And so it was a really pointed time in my legal career where I took it on. I made the decision, I made that commitment to the dean that, yes, I will become a real lawyer. Now, when I joined the Department of Justice, keep in mind, I have a 5-year, Bachelor of Commerce degree, which is now equivalent to a Master of Business Administration. So business was my first career, if you will, management consultant for global companies. And I always wanted to be a lawyer, though. So went back to law school. I basically wrote the LSAT the night before leaving for Hawaii after I graduated with my Bachelor of Commerce. And my attitude was, I'm not studying, I'm not preparing, I'm going to write this cold. I don't even know what the exams look like, because if this is meant to be, then I'll do well. And if not, then I've got lots of other opportunities available to me. Well, I ended up placing in the top 4% of the exams written that year. And so to me, that was like, okay, even though I'm going to work for a couple of years as a management consultant, because in that capacity, I was able to meet, cold call, get into the top 5 people, top 5 executive positions in large corporations. I thought that was good experience for me. But then went back to law school, and after law school went into private practice, and eventually joined the Department of Justice. So while I'm there, and while I am trying to I'm keen, like I said, I'm not just going to repeat and do as told. I need to know I'm doing the best job. I need to know the law. I need to know what I'm doing. Well, Department of Justice, I have access to everything. I can't tell you what I've read there, what I've seen there, but I can tell you it's an unbroken chain as well in terms of this situation that we have in this part of the world. And I've sat at the war tables. I can't tell you what I said when I heard some of the things I said. I can't tell you my reactions. I also can't tell you why I found so many lawyers that were supposed to be acting for Benz really not doing the protection and the job that I felt was possible. And one of those lawyers was really the last straw, that broke the camel's back, so to speak, that said, now it is time for me to get out there. And my intention was to train lawyers so they would know who their clients are, how to protect them, what their clients have, and not just settle for, whatever might be coming their way. And Jack Woodward was really that lawyer that made me finally, and a number of lawyers before him, but made me finally decide it was time. And it was because there's a scenario involving serious health issues for a band. And he was bragging about how he had gotten this great settlement. But all he had really gotten was what they were already entitled to. There was nothing for the wrongdoing. Now, being in an adversarial situation at that point, there was nothing I could do. You know, my client is opposite, and, you know, but reading and dealing with that, it was something I just couldn't stomach, right? And yet, you know, the lawyers making millions and millions of dollars, but the poor people whose health needed to be addressed, who needed help for just alleviate the suffering, what was there for them, right? So after that, I went in-house. I fell for this, hey, self-government, it's going to be great, you know. And I went in-house with an Indian band, first lawyer to do so in Canada. And boy, I learned a lot there too. And I quickly realized that at the same time I'm being educated by the elders, and, you know, being the first white person to be told about what went down in residential schools, horrendous. I still have nightmares. That it's the people who really need the help. And through this process of me applying my knowledge that of how the people are represented, you know, for instance, petitions would go into the Crown. That would trigger Department of Justice to act, things of that nature. Unfortunately, as I applied those very same processes, only on the other side, so to speak, how to trigger the fiduciary duty, law societies determined and decided, you know, they're self-governing, that no, hang on, we can't have lawyers doing what Swillow's doing. Therefore, we declare that a band can only be represented by chief and counsel, and the lawyer can only take instructions from the chief and counsel. That's how the band, quote unquote, gets represented. Well, I don't know anyone really who hasn't seen conflicts of interest in situations where essentially band members, nationals don't have access to justice. They really don't. So I tested the waters while I was still practicing law in BC. I was the first lawyer to say, no, I'm not using this Section 35 stuff because it's, I can see what it is, okay? And whoa, that got everyone really upset. No, you have to go under Section 35. It's like, no, hold on. I'm going to represent my clients as best I can and their nations. I know their nations. So I'm not going to go under and say they're domestic ethnic minorities, things like that. So, you know, what comes after that, you know, lots of either pressures, threats, death threats, $100 million if you go away and retire on an island, you know, things like that. Well, the more that stuff starts happening, the more I realize I'm really onto something. And the more I dig and the more I do research and the more my knowledge increases and the more the ancestors help. Because why? I care. I understand those basic laws of loving, caring, sharing. So understanding things from both perspectives with no disconnects. Remember that the lawyers, when they were told, you cannot do this. Well, the senior lawyers who at that time would know everything I know now and have known, there's no incentive to teach the younger lawyers because that's basically how the practice of law happens. It's not law school, it's through learning from what the senior lawyers do, the practice of law. So the lawyers were no longer having that information shared. Why? Well, because they're not going to be able to use it. They're not going to be able to have Indigenous clients. Then when it starts back up, you end up having this development of Aboriginal law. It's new law. It's only really coming into effect in the 1990s. And it says as a result of Section 35 of the Constitution Act 1982. So this is when you have this option, if you will, to move into an assimilated structure and entity, and again, cut off. And since the people, the decision makers, since the people have always, quite frankly, whether it was enfranchisement, whether it was whatever was proposed, the people always protected as a whole. Very hard to get something past the people. And remember that when, for instance, developments on reserve are happening, it was the Department of Justice lawyers' duty, the fiduciary duty, to make sure that what was being proposed is in the best interests of the people as a whole, the band as a whole, the members, not a couple of people. And I can't tell you how many things came past my desk that I said, no frickin' way. It was clear that the chief was going to get all the money, or a chief and council, or a couple of people. Like, no, that's not in the best interest of the people. That protection has also been removed now by Canadian government policy. So, and I don't want to get into this too much, but bottom line, before Department of Justice lawyers could basically say, no, hold up, you can't do that. Government policy now is, we don't want to hear from you. We will not receive any opinions from you or directions from you unless we specifically ask you for it. So clamping down and locking down and shutting up the Department of Justice lawyers. So that's why we have today a whole bunch of stuff going on. Well, I'm going to tell you this one, that in my, I'll say dream. Okay. It's different than a dream though. I was shown how all these small soldiers, all looking the same, were just pouring through the prairie and going down even towards into the States. But I was standing there on the mountains, your mountains. I was standing there, and as they went by, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be killed, right? This army's going to kill me. And they looked Asian, right? They're Chinese. I'm going to be killed. But as they came past me, they nodded. I'm like, what? Then I looked around, and guess who was standing all behind me? There's all these real chiefs, real leaders, the many leaders. That's your name, is it? Many chiefs, many leaders. They were all standing there behind me. We were all up on this hill watching, and they were not nodding to me. They were nodding to you. And that is absolutely consistent with preserving your nationhood, preserving those treaties, and not coming under Canada. If you're under Canada that way, you're there where they're running over top. How do you know what the political situation is going to be in the future? In the far past, you didn't, but you're still here today. And your ancestors were able to get a commitment from the Crown to recognize who you are. And, where do you go, from there? So, right. That's not how it's done. And unfortunately, no one's making these demands to say, like, for instance, like talking about, was it the chief there? Oh, we need capital partners. What? Like, if there's going to be development that happens, no matter what Canada and the provinces are saying to companies coming in, they can say, hey, I'm taxing you and whatever. That's not your concern. Your concern is this is use of your land, and they need your consent, not consultation, the people's consent, in order to provide direct permissions to say, okay, you can do this. But guess what? You can have conditions linked to that. We will allow you to mine here, but not there. And you will be required to deposit this as a surety to make sure damage is contained. And you will abide by these particular environmental controls. You know, there was a lot of emphasis yesterday by a lawyer saying, oh, you know, your way is a good way. And if you can influence policy, then blah, blah, blah. Why give up control? You have the direct ability to insist that if you want our permissions, this is how you have to do it. And here's what you need to pay us. So why do you need partners to enforce treaty and enforce your law? The law of the land, it's trite to say, it's where the land is. That has not been killed off. It can't be. The crown and her governments, his governments, cannot do that. The only way it happens is if you give it up, you give it away, you hand it off, you leave it by the side of the road. I can't recommend that. Quite frankly, you would have no issues with, you know, drug treatment requirements, housing, all that, you know, that sad story about sitting on the side of the road drinking Lysol. Do you see what's happened in Dubai and places like that? The people aren't trying to get menial labor jobs. They're benefiting, and I can't comment as to the, you know, how fairly or not, but bottom line, you know, you don't see Sikhs saying, give my people jobs. They say, give us this amount of money. They say, give us this share off the top, you know, before expenses, you pay us first. These kinds of things. That's all within your control, but you don't believe it. People have been taught that's not possible. Well, why? Well, because, you know, they're Indians. They're just like, you know. And the solution suggested to you is to abandon it, but instead of just leaving it beside the road, just to literally hand it over to Canadian governments, including now provincial governments. You know, so my view of the future, 500 years from now, if you decide to become a domestic ethnic minority today, I don't anticipate 500 years from now, many will be walking around for the kinds of things that were described. Are we still good to go, or do people need a 5-minute break?
I'm good, Janice.
Okay, great.
How about you, Roger?
We're good to go.
Okay, I'll keep moving along in this disjointed manner.
Janet, could you repeat the last words before you stopped? About the future?
Oh, yeah, I'm just saying, if you decide today to become this domestic ethnic minority, if you go along with things being signed by people that don't have the ability to sign you away, but you just go, oh, well, what am I going to do about it? How was that put? Oh, never mind. This is not an, oh, never mind. Did your reputation as fierce warriors, they never said, oh, never mind, right? That's something new. That's not in your blood. And what's in your blood is supposed to be protecting for these next, each 500 segment that's to come. How many of you had before? Relying on who you are, the instructions, original instructions, developing your laws on that basis, not saying and giving up. And when you say things like, oh, we're trying to get it back, then you've said you've lost it. And once it's gone, it's gone. It's all about saying, no, you've got this wrong. We're not falling for this position that Canada keeps teaching and saying. Just because they say it doesn't make it right. But if you believe it and you act consistent with it over enough period of time, long enough, then you will become that, whether something's signed or not. And every little document for every little thing, whether, incrementally, this is the approach now, not one big thing. Incrementally, all of that stacks up as evidence to say, yeah, this is how you saw yourselves. At some point between 2018 and 2030, this is when they're gone. This is where you're going. But they can have a big stack like this of documents and each one being that size. You can take 2 paragraphs to say, nope, not so. That's not true. We're here. We still have this. How do I know that? Because I've also done that and tested the waters and dealt with the Queen directly to remind of just that, of the things that can't be done. Recall last year that in less than 1 month's notice, Prince of Wales, now King Charles III, suddenly is making a visit to Canada. And suddenly having a one-on-one meeting with the Governor General and a one-on-one meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau. Do you know how long it takes for royal visits to be set up, security, everything that has to happen, especially in the Jubilee year? This was not planned. This was a sudden work. I'm coming. What triggered that? What made the Queen, because of course her health situation, she wasn't able to do it herself. And what made the Queen say, this is happening? It's one of my letters. It's one of my saying, you can't do this. This is what your unlawful governments are doing. And so you see it happening. But then of course, it's always a double-edged sword, as they say. When I reveal information, when I informed, Canadian governments can react quickly, and then take a next step in terms of their strategy. Hasn't been the case so far as much with Indigenous nations. There are many, of course, that I've been helping and such, but unfortunately, there are a few people who dominate as advisors who are just using the same old toolkit, just like what we heard about yesterday. Well, the only way to really do this, I see this vision of you're going to have a separate parliament. Oh my God, right? Pan-Indianism, pan whatever, right? Pan-Aboriginal, all part of the, and they're talking about Indigenous peoples being part of that. I guess you're going to have Métis and Inuit in there too. I don't deal with them because they're not nations. Inuit capitulated. They entered into a final land claim agreement. Métis, whole other situation. They're not a standalone nation. They can never enter into a treaty. They can enter into land claim settlements, but not a treaty. So I work with nations preserving their sovereignty, their jurisdiction, and their treaties. And you know what? It doesn't take multiple millions of dollars. It takes a few paragraphs. It takes 2 pages sometimes. In one case with the Six Nations back in 2006, it took 1 paragraph to get the then Prince of Wales, Charles, to call off the army in Canada in the middle of the night, right? So there's so much of this kind of stuff. I'm not here speculating, thinking. I'm saying relying on the fact of you continuing as nations, relying on the recognition of you as nations and as sovereign and as international players and entities, and reminding the Crown, here's what you're bound by, and here's what your governments can't do. There have been immediate reactions, not years of lawsuits and paying lawyers. Do you know what these lawyers are saying about you? There are basically 3 attack situations happening right now, and it's critical. This is really critical. They're saying things like, because lawyers will draft a statement of claim, which sets out the facts that they say exist. In the statement of claims for the annuities lawsuits, the Robinson-Huron 1850 treaty annuities case, and we have one person, there's a couple of people, a few people in that one. Then we have one person in Treaty 1 who has obtained a representation order saying, and both these lawsuits say this, there are no more nations, they're gone. The only thing that exists are Indian bans, Indian Act bans. And they're saying crazy things like they're the successor. You read the treaties, the only place it says a successor is, as I mentioned, for the king and the queen. In other words, just because the queen dies and we now have a king didn't mean the treaties fell. The crown remains bound. And the crown, in their interests, their permissions remain in place. So, and I just, sorry, because I get upset when I hear so much literally nonsense that when you say that's not good enough for us, we want Canada to create those things for us. We want to be a new legal entity created by Canada. There are consequences, and it's starting to happen. If you look up north, KFN, they got burned out. The band office burned down. Everything's wildfires, just taking them all out. If you look at Mississauga, which is a Woodward case, they developed this concept of duty to consult within the Section 35 doctrine. They're evacuated right now. These things are happening. But like up north, the people that I was helping living right across the river from KFN, they're fine. Their people relying on their laws and the powers that they know still how to use, kept that fire at bay. Yes, there's firefighters and things like that, but you can't ignore the power of your actual laws and what can be done. So that was the one thing. The fact is that with treaties, the Crown has recognized your ownership, your underlying title, your original, your continuing ownership. And I'm going to get into some of the details of that. So I completely disagree with that comment that, oh, you have to do it this way, and that's the only way you'll own. You got to go get it back. You have it. You still have it. It's all about whether you're going to give it away, whether you're going to abandon it. That's what's in play. Not that it's been taken, it doesn't exist, you have to create it, you have to go get sovereignty. You have sovereignty. If you abandon it, if you lose it, it's gone. There's a concept called res nullius, which means no one's property. If you were to leave on the road, if you will, your bundle, which is your, who you are, your laws, your land, all that, and leave it behind and say, we don't need this. Canada's going to set us up nice. We're going to do what we want Canada to create us now. Well, the Crown can lawfully, under res nullius, the doctrine, pick up these lands, right? Because it's no one's property at that point. And the next in line, because of treaties especially, the next in line is the Crown. And then, because the Crown is a constitutional monarchy, the Canadian governments can control all that, because the constitutional monarch, the king, must act on the advice of his Privy Council members, which is the Prime Minister, elected ministers, etc. So let's launch into how is that different than what it actually exists. Obviously, Canada, that's what Canada wants. They want to control everything. They don't want this pesky problem that they don't actually own the land. They have an interest. Questions at the end. I'm going to be going all over the place here, right? It's not a linear presentation, and I'm not apologizing for that. That's just the way things are. Now, here, the other before I forget that second comment that I disagreed with so strongly, that NRTA is ripe for challenge as an unconstitutional amendment to the treaties. There is no government of Canada, the Dominion of Canada, that has any power whatsoever to amend any treaty. Land claims maybe, but not treaties, not Treaty 7, for example. Are there issues around NRTA? Yes, but not the way these lawyers who want you to get either to do specific claims or file litigation again, multiple millions of dollars in their pocket. How is that really going to benefit you when you're then saying and giving this power that doesn't exist to Canadian governments?